Hi guys, Dave Pinson here, Philippine Bible Ministry. Hopefully the dogs will stop barking. That Max, he's our new dog. He barks all the time. They all do. Anyway, today I want to talk about the Bible. I want to talk about lies in the Bible. I want to talk about. Did you know that the Bible is not all full of truth? I did this once before. It's funny. I just have a suggestion for all of you YouTubers. In other words, people who watch YouTube. You shouldn't respond to a title. You should actually watch the video before you respond because you don't know what people are going to say. And what I'm going to say is 100% true. Not everything in the Bible is the truth. We have lying prophets. For example, we have falsehoods that are spoken of. They're just recorded in the Bible. And so I'm reading through the book of Job right now. I'm reading through the book of Job, and one thing that occurred to me years ago was that Job's friends don't speak truth. God was ready to kill them. That's how bad it was. Why? Because Job's friends, the best thing they ever did was they sat with him for a week or whatever it was. When it first happened, and Job lost. Just so a little refresher on the story. Job was a righteous man. Job was a good man. God loved Job. Job loved God. What well before Moses, by the way, probably before Abraham, or at least during Abraham's life. That's probably the time frame of it, right? He had a relationship with God, and he had everything. He was the wealthiest man on the earth, right? And he comes from this place called the land of Uz, and it's actually a real place in the old days. Not Oz, Uz. And then the devil came to God one day, and he says, and God says, "Have you considered my servant? He's so righteous." And he goes, "Yeah, that's because you protect him. You take away that, and we'll see. He'll curse you. He won't curse me. Okay, go ahead." So he killed all his family. He killed all his children. He took away all his stuff. All he had left was his wife. And so that was a horrible thing. And his friends came up, his three friends, and they came and they just hung out with him and they just sat with him. And that's the best thing they did. Oftentimes, usually that's the best thing you can do. I did that once. I lost an uncle, and I sat with his wife, and I didn't say much, boy, but she was sure. Well, I'm sure glad you were here because you sure ministered to me. And I was like, I didn't do anything, and that's the best ministry sometimes. Just be quiet. Don't try to answer. You can't answer people's why. Why did the little kid die? Why you can't answer those questions? I don't need to answer those questions. I trust God because of what He's done for me. Anyway, so Job's friends, and then they start to speak up, and then Job starts to talk, and he says, "Here's the worst thing he did is wasn't technically it wasn't a sin. He wished he'd never been born. He wished that he hadn't had to go through all this." And his wife said, "Curse God and die." He says, "Shut up, woman, you're a knucklehead." So God gave him a wife, but she didn't give him good advice. But it's understandable advice. This is horrible. Nobody should go through this. Too bad they don't have assisted suicide. Oh, right, it's a sin. So his friends start talking, and here's the odd thing about it: they believe what most people believed in those days. Most people believed in the days of Israel and the days of the Old Testament days, and many Christians believe the same thing. Well, what did they believe? Well, this wouldn't happen to you if you didn't. You must have done something, Job. This happened. You've obviously done something. You act like you're all innocent. You're not. You won't even. You're not even humble enough to admit that you made a mistake, and that's a lie. It's not. That's not true. So when you're reading through it, it's really hard for me to read through something that I know has a lot of falseness in it. Right. That's why it's hard for me to like. Let's say there's a pastor or pastors that I love and I like everything they say. I like, right? And then all of a sudden one day they say something that I think is wrong, or they double down on it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then even worse than that, let's say they do something that's wrong. Let's say they approve of a sin, like a lot of pastors and a lot of people today, they approve of things that the Bible say are abomination, and then or they actually do it. They actually got caught doing some kind of, and then now I usually eventually I get rid of them. I mean, there's some singers out there that I loved over the days. One of the original biggest Christian singers. I still listen to her. I love her music. I have a CD of hers that I wore that thing out, man. You know, and a guy I just found out he molested some kids, and so get back to the false. So that's bad. So what I'm saying is, once you know something's false, you know, It's like the National Enquirer. No, I never. No, I don't even know if that's still around. But back in my day, it was really big. The Sun and the National Enquirer, and they always had them at the grocery store. So when you're leaving, you see these crazy headlines, "Bat Baby" and this and that and the other, and just sensational things. Kind of like Tucker Carlson. Sorry, I used to be a fan. Now I think he's lost his mind. But anyway, but you see these things, National Enquirer, and then every now and then I would hear, well, this guy wrote an article in National Enquirer. He won a Pulitzer Prize. Why? Because it was a really good article that had truth in it. It was the truth, and no one else would publish it. National Enquirer would publish anything, so they published it, and it became really well receptive. It was received well because it was an amazing article. So you can find truth in Job's friends and what they said. There's a lot of it's truth, but now you have to weed it out, right? You have to weed out what they said, and you have to spend your time. I still try to read, and I must be honest with you, just like with like all the details of the temple and all the details of the law and all the details of the genealogies. Sometimes I read through it like this. Okay, but I try every time I read through it, which I read through the Bible quite often. I try to stop and see, okay, this part's true, and I think next time, or maybe the rest of this time, maybe I'll start highlighting the truth. That might be a good. See, this is how I get my Bible knowledge. But there's lies in the Bible, and so you have to be careful. Like you can't just quote stuff out of Job unless Job said it or God said it, because there's the three friends, and there's Job and there's God. Those are the people who speak the quotation marks, and we know that God and Job are telling the truth, even though Job is. Well, let's see if you would whine if everybody you loved died and you lost everything you had and you had sores all over your body. I think I might curse God and die. I don't know if I could handle it like Job did. So it's good to know that. Now, what does it have to do with today? Why are you even posting this? Thanks for the information. And it is good information. It's good to know that not every word in there is true. Every word is God breathed. In other words, He's given us a report of what happened. In truth, this is what people said, but not everything that's said is truth. Right? This is good to know. But why do I say that Job's friends have infected the world today? Here's why. A lot of Christians think that things happen and that and I do think that God's behind everything, but unlike them, I try. Well, let's put it this way: I try not to put God's motive behind everything. Well, the reason this happened to Iran is because they're evil and God got tired of them, and that's why this happened. This is God's will, and the reason this happened is because this is God's will. And here's the problem with that, or the problem with that is when bad things happen to good people, that whole theory falls apart, because that's what Job's friend said. You've obviously done something wrong. Obviously, you've done something wrong. So if you go to, like, sticking with the Iran Israel thing, if you go to October 7th, when babies were put in microwaves and raped and eaten, and children and all that horrible stuff, was that God's will too? I mean, you with the same logic that you just told me that this happened because God wanted it to happen, and that's what happened because it's obviously, and then obviously, then the bad thing was also God wanted it to happen, right? Because it happened. And somebody said that one day. Well, it's God's will because it happened. That's probably not 100% untrue, but it's not for me. Those things are, and I don't want to be like Job's friends and just try to pretend that I understand everything. It's like somebody once told me, well, look at this guy's ministry over here. So somebody said, Dave, you should come to this church. Why? Oh, the pastor's amazing. Everything he's touched has turned to gold. And, he's just got this amazing, he's very successful. And my first thought, and that's before I have as much understanding as I have today. I was a little bit more over here in some ways, but I understood this. I said, I don't want a pastor that everything he touches is turned to gold. I want a pastor that's been through hell and back. I want a pastor that's been to the depth. I want a pastor that understands what that's all about. Just as Jesus was a sufferer, I want a pastor that has suffered. And because sometimes good people suffer. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, "In this world you will have tribulation." Jesus said, "Those Jesus, not Jesus, just Jesus." But the Bible says in more than one place, those who He loves, He will chastise. It doesn't say those who do wrong things. It says those He loves. What does that mean? Well, because of our iniquity, what's it called? Yeah, because of our iniquity in us, God needs to change us. And that's why in Psalm 66, here's another one to chew on. Psalm 66, I forgot which verse it says, but you have laid affliction on us. You, God, have late affliction. Not he allowed it. Well, God is good all the time, and sometimes He allows things to happen. Okay, that's true, but sometimes He causes it to happen. Why? It says, "And you laid affliction on you, caused men to ride over our heads." And then it says, "Here's the good part." But you led us through to abundant life. I'm changing that abundant life. I don't remember what's it. Rich fulfillment, I think it says. So He led us through to rich fulfillment after the chastisement. So don't be Job's friends. Don't be pretending that you know everything why it happened and this is. I mean, you can do that. People do it, and I probably do it too. But just remember that we don't understand why God's. We don't understand what Job's friends didn't know why this happened, and they were wrong. They were so wrong. Like I said before, I'll just close with this. God was willing to kill them. He said, Job, you better pay for those guys before I wipe them out because I don't like the way they're talking about me. They don't understand anything. And I don't want to be the guy that doesn't understand anything. I'll just leave some things up to him. And when it's over and done, then we'll know someday. Someday we'll know as we're known. And I'm just gonna hold on to that. God bless you guys. Ta ta for now.